interesting topics. Of course, there's been some methodology updates in the last couple of months. We also will see some LTCC results from both core and Nordics that has been, at least in the Nordics, been live, and then LTCCM for core region will also be and a status update on. And also we will come by a workshop or update on sort of the general status of the long-term flow-based allocation products and the improvement projects that we are working on, so the collateral improvements primarily. And yeah, we will of course see also some simulations result. Any questions before we start the workshop? And feel free to raise your hand as we go, and we'll take the question. And also feel free to use the chat. We'll try to keep up. Other than that, if there are no further questions or no questions, I'll leave the floor to the next person in line. So the general long-term flow-based allocation update.
Thank you,
It's
Jim.
Martin or Martin. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Thank you, Jim. So my name is Martin Poe from ACER. So this is a joint workshop from ENTSO-E and ACER. We coordinated on the agenda. What we would like to add to this workshop is a bit of recap. Where have we come from and where are we going to? So there have been two decisions in 2019, 2021 on the Nordic and core long-term capacity calculation methodologies. Both methodologies were decided to go into the long-term flow-based capacity calculation. In 2022, there were 3 workshops with stakeholders, which were presenting the first simulation results in core. Those results in core were not exactly satisfactory, neither for stakeholders, neither for us. For regulators, ACER, we were not happy with those results. Basically, the capacities on many borders were too low, and in generally too low. We have identified at that time 2 main reasons why the results were not good. The first reason was that the offered capacity domain in the flow-based, which came from the capacity calculation, was significantly smaller than what is currently being offered in the ATC allocation. That's one reason, and the other reason is the competition between borders in the flow-based allocation. You know, the borders which have higher price difference get a bit more capacity than the borders with lower price difference. So there were 2 reasons behind these results, and we needed to tackle both reasons during this couple of years. So what we have found out is that in terms of capacity calculation, the scenario-based approach, which means the common grid model, and then, you know, with all the outages, has certain limitations when it comes to capacity calculation. You know, if you consider too many outages across the whole year, it gives a very conservative estimate of the network situation, and this will give you quite low capacities. So TSOs, NRAs, ACER were struggling with this question for the last 3 years, trying to solve this, how to increase the capacity being offered in the long-term time frame when we go to coordinated capacity calculation. Subsequently, the core regulators in ACER, we asked core TSOs to improve the long-term capacity calculation and increase the size of capacity domain to be of similar size as in the current ATC domain. So our instruction and preference was that when we go to the long-term flow-based allocation, we need to have the similar size of capacity domain as we have currently in the ATC capacity allocation. This was the request from core NRAs and ACER to core TSOs. Next slide, please. So after that request, the core TSOs have done some work, some testing analysis, and they came up with the proposal to adjust the flow-based domain to be of similar size as the current ATC domain. Cortis also recently made a proposal to amend the core long-term capacity calculation methodology, and NRE approval is now pending. NREs have 6 months to approve this methodology. The preliminary testing of this methodology, which will be shown later in the slides, shows much better results than those in 2022. We are quite hopeful about those results. Of course, there is still some low capacities on few borders, which mainly result in the flow-based competition. But the results are still comparatively to 2022. They are much better. And most borders have quite, let's say, comparable results to the current ATC allocation. So in our view, the proposed capacity calculation method seems like a pragmatic first step. Of course, we cannot have perfect capacity allocation at the start, but some improvements will need to be done in the following years. So take this today's workshop as a first step. Improvements will follow. We have, at least from ACER point of view, we have in mind to move towards more statistical based capacity calculation. So taking into account the statistics of the day-ahead capacity calculation, moving away from the scenario approach and common grid modeling approach. And finally, so this will be one improvement we hope to see next, which will continue to improve the capacity calculation. And similarly, as will be said also, that we also are planning improvements in collateral requirements, which are expected to be done about 1 year after the go live of the flow-based. So with today's workshop, we hope that you can acknowledge that some improvements have been made, and some improvements will come just after the go live of this flow-based capacity allocation. I stop here and give the word back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Martin. Indeed, an interesting time ahead, and a lot of improvements coming. We also seen in the past it's been quite a journey on this product, but of course we're on the track, and that leads us to the next topic, which is the sort of overall status and key headlines. And I'll leave the floor to Zhao.
Thank you. So my name's Sava. I'm the project manager for Zhao for long-term flow-based. And so the executive summary here is that we are running well in terms of the project. We are on program. We still are on track for the regulatory go live in November 26. Of course, there are still many developments still in progress or ongoing. So we're being dynamic about how we're managing the risk and maintaining still time and quality. Some key headlines below. We won't go into each one of them, but just to show that we've made some big leaps and achievements in the design and the simulation platform. ECAT development now complete and in testing internally. So well on track, and some good progress made so far. We can jump to the next slide as well. So the highlights, cycle 6 scope completed. So for ECAT, including the long-term flow-based additions, we have internal testing underway, and we will be starting our testing with our stakeholders and the TSOs early next year. The publication tool for core is completed as per our scope, and that's in time perfectly for the parallel run. And the Nordics is in progress as we speak. The external parallel run itself, this was written slightly earlier, so has commenced as of the 24th, and we are in progress for the first auction. CRDS development has been initiated as well, as per scope and deliverables agreed. The next slide. So we've just mapped out a bit of the stakeholder involvement going forward. Simulation platform, we did 2 rounds of testing of the simulation platform in August and September. That was primarily to test the functionality and make sure it's behaving as expected. We also received a bit of feedback. By the end of February, beginning of March of 26, we will be making the simulation platform permanently available for the MPs. We've also shown here across our other tools, so ECAT, website, and publication, we will be starting the SIT testing with the RCCs, TSOs, and the market participants who will be getting involved. We will be sending ahead of that. The usual communications that we've done in the past. So we'll be messaging on the messaging board a month in advance with details of timelines, engagement. We'll also be providing details of how to register and the registration process. So with the messaging board, they'll also receive an email as well. And then finally, the last bar there is the parallel run, which is a 12-month parallel run, combined LTCC and LTFBA, taking us all the way to November 26 go live. Any questions?
There were some one question of the results, but I think Gianfranco touched upon that or answered that question. I don't see any further. Jerome, comment again. When are the results published, Sava?
The results from?
Maybe Jerome can specify what the question is about, what results. Feel free to unmute as well if that's helpful.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, my question is so regarding the first result of the parallel run, when they will be published on the link you provided. Because actually I don't see, unless I'm mistaken, but I don't see any result for the parallel run. So I was wondering when will be the first result published.
So we'll be publishing on the 3rd of December for the first auction. And what we have also is the auction calendar. But yeah, that's when we expect to be providing that information.
Okay, in 3rd of December. Okay, thank you.
We will send a market message as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Sava. I don't think there are any more questions for Zhao. So we move quickly into the next topic, which is the HAR amendment, and I'll leave the floor to Mila.
Thank you, Jim. I hope you can all hear me properly. So as you know, TSO submitted the HAR amendment as per the biennial amendments on 27th of March, and it got approved on the 19th of September. Some of the main changes included the MTU related changes. You know, we moved to a 15-minute MTU in day ahead, which meant that as long-term processes are still in an hourly granularity, we had to change the MTU in the HAR to replace it with an hour. One of the main discussions was around the nominations, and now the HAR clearly refers to nomination rules. So if nomination rules change to 15-minute MTU, then everything in the HAR will be compatible with that. Otherwise, it's still 1 hour. We also had some changes linked to registration, clarifications around the deadlines, the VAT numbers, qualified electronic signatures, this kind of thing. Then the clarified reasons for refusal of application, and suspension, termination, etc. Yeah, these were pretty straightforward. And then we had a clarification on prices. These related to Article 48 and 59 on the remuneration. of LTTRs. These were rewritten and clarified by ACER to clearly state what the volumes are, what the prices are in each specific case. And the articles are much clearer now. On the price cap publication, this was an initial TSO proposal, but it was dropped, and we will discuss the collateral improvements later on in the call. But this was also discussed with ACER. And finally, we have some financial related changes. These are around the bank guarantee deadlines, the payment dispute resolutions and such. And along with that, some additional clarifications on oriented bidding zone border, for instance, instead of bidding zone border in directions, or what the suspension conditions are in case of sanctions, or how the reimbursement is processed in case of auction cancellation. So all of these are published now. You have the new version of the HAR, which is applicable for the products, the yearly products for 2026. If you have any questions, please feel free to, I think these were already explained and approved quite some time ago. And I'll leave the floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thanks, Mila. So the next topic is the collateral improvement. Martin from ACER also mentioned that topic, and the presenter is Stefan from APG.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Stefan Kraus, and I'm leading the topic of collateral improvements from the TSO side. So as Mila already mentioned before, this topic was discussed also during the current HAR amendment. And before going into the details of the followed approach for the future and the current status of this project, I would like to give some background of the topic in general. So here on the slide, it says that according to FCA Article 41, market participants have to deposit financial collaterals prior to the auctions, and the sub, so basically JAO, has to calculate the credit limit of market participants before each auction and report it. And yeah, the credit limit itself is the result of the collaterals minus the outstanding payment obligations. And now the question arises how to determine the outstanding payment obligations, and especially due to the fact that when using LTFBA, the auctions are held simultaneously for all bidding zone borders, the collateral requirements for market participants increase, and therefore the topic of credit limit verification and collateral management becomes a more important topic. And the question is how to filter the bids intelligently. So during the past HAR amendment in 2023, the discussions on this topic already took place. And during that time, the outcome was to use a price cap based on day ahead and forward prices in order to calculate the maximum payment obligation for market participants, which also can be seen in the current version of the HAR. Especially Article 34 is describing this approach, but this approach can lead to an over or underestimation of the market clearing price, and therefore bids might be filtered out, which shouldn't be filtered out. And later in the process, during the discussions of the HAR in 2023, ENTSO already proposed an alternative approach to filter the bids, but during that time, LTFBA Go Live should not be jeopardized due to additional workload on collateral improvements, and that's why it's now up for after long-term flow-based Go Live. Maybe on the next slide, we can now see the details of the approach itself. So in general, the optimization problem or the optimization function stays the same. We still have a maximization of the welfare, but we do have now new boundary conditions under this new concept. So in the end, there is the binary decision, this bit activation, which can be seen in the middle of the slide. And due to this bit activation, we can now clearly define what would be the accepted volume per market participant. And then we also use the market clearing price itself during the allocation algorithm, which is in the allocation algorithm, in order to determine the collateral boundary or the maximum payment obligation of market participants. And by using the actual market clearing price, as shown here on this slide, as a boundary condition of the optimization problem, the problem of the over or underestimation of collaterals, which was there or which is there with a price cap approach, is solved. So on the next slide, I want to give an update on the current status and the way forward of the project. So based on TSO's request, JAO has initiated the proof of concept outside the scope of LTFBA. So as mentioned before, we do not want to jeopardize the LTFBA go live in November 2026, which is why we handle this topic here outside of the scope of LTFBA. And the proof of concept, as mentioned, already started. And before that, open legal questions had to be clarified, which was done. And also a kickoff meeting between JAO and ENTSO already took place. Some first required data has already been gathered by TSOs and JAO and made available to ENTSO. And the results of the proof of concept is expected to be ready by the first quarter of 2026. And if this proof of concept results are positive, then we'll have to amend from TSO side the sub and har methodologies accordingly, which typically requires roughly 6 months. And according to our current time plan, we foresee to have a public consultation for the har amendment in March or April next year. Are there any questions with regard to the collateral improvement topic? Seems not to be the case. So I'll give the floor to the next speaker.
Thanks, Stefan. So now we sort of touch upon the general topic of long-term flow-based allocation, the pan-European project, and we'll dive into the 2 local projects now, so the core capacity calculation and later the Nordic capacity calculation. But first is the core capacity calculation project, which I think it's Patricia that will present.
Yep.
Thank
you. Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name is Patricia Brnikova. I'm the core LTCC convener. For those who follow the usual fora, where we share updates from core TSOs, you may know me. And also these slides might not be so new for you, but I think it gives a very nice rounded overview because LTFBA cannot work without LTCC and other way around as well. So today we are bringing to you a summary of the LTCCM amendment, which is one of the biggest building blocks from core that at least sort of continues throughout this year, and also how we then tackled the responses to public consultation. Obviously then the second bigger block for this year was the external parallel run. So I would share some information about what the objectives are, the planning, and where you can find the data sets. And obviously, the LTCC simulation results will be also provided later on to give you a practical example of what we try to implement in the LTCCM. But I think what is very good to see and hear is that LTCC and core TSOs especially completed a critical phase of the project by the launch of the external parallel run on the 24th of November. So basically in the past week, we were able to run the yearly capacity calculation, and this was for me personally, but also for the team, a key milestone ahead of the November 2026 go live. So obviously to get there, we had to tackle and tap into many different topics. And also I think Martin from ACER managed to give you a bit of a taste of what we faced. So we had quite some technical, procedural and organizational preparation going forward to meet the external parallel run planning. But at the same time, we knew that the LTCCM amendment is necessary to facilitate the improvements that TSOs assessed and proposed as a way forward. For the LTCCM amendment, indeed, we tried to incorporate as much as possible the regulatory and market feedback. And there we also introduced the benchmark-based approach for capacity calculation as the improvement for the go live. I'm happy to report that we submitted the LTCCM amendment to core NRAs on the 21st of November, which then also ticked one of the boxes to go forward with the external parallel run. Connected to this amendment, there is also the removal of LTA inclusion in day-ahead and intraday. So it is a parallel activity that sort of paves the way to the benchmark approach, and I will also touch that on the second slide. But I think what is quite important to say here that the market participants and NRAs have been actively consulted. So this is not the first time we see each other in 2025. And this also then shaped the amendment and the external parallel run setup. As mentioned, I'm happy to report that the external parallel run first run was executed already with a benchmark approach. So we were able to quite fast settle upon a concept, implement the concept in the tooling, and also introduce it in the LTCCM. So LTCC go live as such remains, that's November 2026, and the regulatory approval of LTCCM amendment and successful external parallel run is a condition to this go live planning. Maybe going to the next slide, it is a bit of an introduction to the benchmark and what's the rationale behind the LTCCM amendment. So as mentioned, this was one of the enablers to make sure that LTCC can work with providing sufficient capacities to the allocation, or at least capacities that are close to historical values. So there was quite some exchange between core NRAs and ACER, and following this regulatory request, core TSOs worked on the measures to improve the LTCC flow-based domain as an input to flow-based allocation. So I think here a very important underlying concept is that core TSOs worked with the offered capacities, not the allocated volumes, and the improvement package then yielded an increase of the flow-based domain through benchmark and going hand in hand with the removal of LTA inclusion. Here I would say the removal of LTA inclusion is rather important because the adjustment of flow-based domain to reach the benchmark is based on the historical offered capacities. For this, I think TSOs see the benefit in providing the stability in the offered volumes for hedging, but also this is done in alignment with ACER and NRAs. There is also a maximum cap for the benchmark to mitigate unwanted financial exposure. So there is a floor and a ceiling to make sure that whatever capacities are offered, it does not violate or it does not distort the revenue adequacy. So both sides of the coin are somehow tackled. This is then very much connected to the removal of LTA inclusion, because with the LTA inclusion in day ahead, there is still a link to operational security. By removing this link, LTCC or the long-term transmission rights are becoming a purely financial product. And here to underline, we are undergoing a major paradigm shift currently together with market participants, while the old paradigm was to maximize capacities that are subject to operational security. You can also imagine that there are some consequences in case you are also considering operational security. But the new paradigm is financial forward market, and the trade-off becomes slightly different. The trade-off is now the congestion income from day ahead to be used to enable the hedging. Again, there are certain consequences which TSOs are trying to mitigate by introducing the max cap for the benchmark. And I would say, all in all, we are able to provide predictable and stable offered capacity or offered volume for hedging and still doing it in a coordinated manner. So I would say this was a lengthy introduction to the LTCCM, but really this is the spirit of what we try to do together with TSOs, with the council from ENTSO, ACER and NRAs. Going to the next slide. Obviously, the LTCCM is methodology as any other. So we ran a public consultation of the amendment proposal. I'd say first and foremost, great thanks to everyone who contributed to public consultation, both from the market, but also the NRA shadow opinion was of great help. So we were able to understand what are the key concerns going forward with the benchmark approach. I would say the benchmarks are broadly supported, mainly seen as a safeguard for the minimum capacity. So as Martin also mentioned, it is somewhat ensuring that the capacity or the flow-based domain is not too small, but also making sure that it sort of moves with the trend. So for the benchmark, I said the support was rather there. A couple of points on what would be the best reference year. There we also made several considerations on what would be the best reference year with regards to what will hold in the future. We also had to explain the introduction of ATC benchmark, because obviously a cap means that the capacities can be restricted in some sense, and also a request to have a more transparent, robust review process and make sure that market always knows what the benchmark is. And I'm certain that with the LTCCM amendment that got approved and is now in NRA's hand, we're able to actually address all of these points with explanation or with adjustments in the methodology itself. I would say the same goes to the NRA shadow opinion. We had a very good dialogue with NRAs on what the setting of the benchmark should be, making sure that 100% of historical values is the basic setting for all borders, except of several exemptions. That's the EAT Polish borders, the interconnected between Ireland and France, and the Slovenian-Croatian border with a specific regime. We also agreed that it is important to make sure that the methodology is straightforward, readable, but also provides enough transparency when it comes to the benchmark values and also the benchmark review process. So the overall amendment package provides, I would say, all the explanation and the clarity. It's also simplified to the extent it is understandable. It gives clarity also on what the specific cases are. So what the setting of benchmark for DAT Croatian Slovenian border is, and also the rest of the specific borders. So with this, I would say good foundation in the LTCCM. We were able to update the process as well. So going forward on slide 20, there is a diagram showing how the LTCC process looks in a detail. Obviously, market participants don't really see much. You don't see the outcome of the process. But in order to have the benchmark introduced, there was some IT implementation necessary as well. So the technical concept were RAMs, are modified during the capacity calculation to produce the domain that accommodates this benchmark. Works with an additional input basically. So TSOs provide the benchmark values that are also then published to the market as an input for the capacity calculation. And basically along the way, once the capacities or the flow-based domains are calculated, the benchmark kicks in, and we are trying to see what the induced flows are when they're calculated for each CNEC based on the benchmark. So we are looking at what the ideal scenario would be, and then the ramps are adjusted to meet these induced flows. So basically the output of the flow-based capacity calculation is a domain that can fully encompass the ATC benchmarks. In translation, it can fully encompass the historical yearly and seasonal average monthly capacities for each individual border, but then also provided it as a coordinated input in the format of a flow-based domain. So we still maintain the original concepts from LTCC, meaning that the LTCC uses the CGMs, uses the outage mapping, the timestamp selection, and the merging. So basically all the steps along the way are there. And this is in line with the original LTCCM, and the novelty is then the highlighted box in the middle, where the benchmark gets implemented into the calculation to make sure that whatever the capacity calculation gives us can really accommodate the benchmarks, and therefore the domain is tuned to mimic or at least to reflect the historical capacities and the hedging volumes from the past. And then we have a last one with a depiction. So on slide 21, maybe to make it less abstract. So basically what we're trying to do with this benchmark implementation is to make sure that the yellow square or the rectangle fits the flow-based domain, that basically all the different corners can be covered by the flow-based domain. So somewhere we stretch, somewhere we reduce, to make sure that it is truly fitting to what the historical volumes were. Not sure whether there are any questions or any reflection on the technical concept and LTCCM. Then if not, I suggest we continue with the presentation and we will tap into the external parallel run. So as I mentioned previously, LTCCM was one of the big milestones and big challenges for this year, but external parallel run is a key milestone going forward with the implementation and towards a go live. So core TSOs will perform 1 yearly and 11 monthly runs, including publication and the extended scope with the allocation process supported by JAO. External parallel run is, for me, a key moment for market participants to get introduced or get more familiar with the process, but also with the results. So RCCs will support TSOs for the readiness or with the readiness for the go live, but then in line with the LTCCM Article 22, market participants will be enabled to adjust their processes and ensure that they are familiar with the new regime. That's why TSOs also decided not to only run the capacity calculation, but also the allocation side of things to make sure that market participants get the best view on the new setup. And we will also run almost the full year, so one yearly and 11 monthly. That means that the market participants request to have at least 1 full year before the go live was accommodated, and the external parallel run will then continue from November 2025 until late October 2026. So I think very important for TSOs is to show that the capacity calculation process can be performed fully in line with all the procedures on a regular basis and according to the methodology. So this is the benefit for TSOs, and obviously market participants to test and adjust their processes ahead of the November 2026 go live. I would say the objectives, I believe I covered some of them, but the process completion is one of the key milestones, including publication. So obviously we ran the internal parallel run, which was focused more on the internal proceeding of TSOs, but now we are also going public with the results, and we try to cover, or we cover the whole chain, including the fallback and backup procedures to make sure that the operational readiness for the go live is there, should be executed by operators, or at least the personnel that will be dealing with the process in the future in line with the operational timings. So this is also rather predictable. And we will be also reporting regularly towards the project, but then also towards NRAs and ACER on the stability and results. And I would say also one additional benefit, perhaps also for JAO, is to make sure that the integration with JAO systems is already there, as well as the central tooling. So we have not only a stable process, but also a stable environment to operate in. On the next slide, there is a visual overview of what we will be doing in the next few months. Actually, hopefully we will also have some more moments with market participants to get maybe some feedback from the external para run. But normally there will be one yearly capacity calculation run, which was already performed last week, and it should be followed by the yearly auction run, as well as the publication, and then more or less same process will be repeated for all the monthly runs. So the next one for monthly for capacity calculation is planned next week. So that would be basically the December capacity calculation for January 2026. So please stay tuned. All the data will be provided on various websites. So we will be using the publication tool, but also the JAO website. You also have the links on the slide here, and everything should be published in line with the standard process. So the capacity calculation as well as the allocation results on regular basis. So I would say market participants will have the access to the data sets. You are more than welcome to analyze the provided results and also work alongside these results with your processes. So for market participants, capacity calculation results can give you insights into the cross-border capacities for hedging, also to validate assumptions and forecast impacts. With a benchmark, as said, the product is somewhat more stable and predictable. When it comes to the allocation results, the bidding strategies will come into play, and you will understand how the historical bids work with the flow-based domain and the new setup, and obviously adjustment your processes can be also done based on the analysis. So we will continue publishing all the results throughout 2026 as well until October, and then we still have the commitment to go live with LTCC in November 2026. Maybe a question, are there any remarks maybe in the chat as well to be answered? Oh, yeah. Okay, so no content questions as such. If not, then thank you very much. This was all up from the LTCC. Obviously, there is one more slide with overview, but that's more fitting for the simulation results. Yeah, so these are the simulation results from 2024, the allocated values. This is the capacities, so basically the volume that gets allocated, and we will have some more slides with simulations later on.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, you will be back in a short period of time.
Thank you.
Thanks until then. And then the next in line is the Nordic RCC on the Nordic capacity calculation topic.
Thank you, Jim. So my name is Jan, and as Jim said, I'm from Nordic RCC, and I will present you the roadmap for the long-term capacity calculation implementation in the Nordic region. For LTFBA, this is done in alignment with the core region in the joint LTFBA project. However, in the Nordic region, we also have a few go live before the one next year. And actually, the first one already took place now in October, where we went live with the interim solution for the year-ahead flow-based capacity calculation, where we apply the ATC extraction. We have a similar go live in Q2 next year, for which testing is currently ongoing, and this will continue throughout the various test phases up until the go live in Q2 2026. And this is as you see on the screen, the month ahead flow-based calculation, where we will also do the ATC extraction. Then we have also in Q2 the go live of the Nordic Gale Availability Collection System, where we will utilize the flow-based capacity calculation to compute the impact of the outage and make those results available. And then finally, as mentioned, we will have the LTFBA go lives in 2026, similar to what Patricia mentioned. Here it's stated Q4, but around November 2026. Later on, my colleague will provide a bit more information about the go live we already have had for year ahead. So with that said, I will hand the word back to Patricia. Or to you, Jim, actually.
I think it's fine if Patricia takes over. So the simulations. So now we touch upon the capacity calculation for both regions. If there are any questions, just post them in the chat or raise your hand. We'll gladly answer those as best as we can. But if there are no further questions on that topic, we'll dive into the simulation results, and I hand the word over to Patricia again.
Yeah, thank you very much. But I'm only thinking what makes most sense. This is a really wordy slide. We also have a couple of graphs later on. So maybe Nikki, if you could go to the annex, starting from slide 32. And I will do the voiceover. So obviously the benchmark gets applied already in our previous simulations, but the external para run as well. So what you can expect and what you will find in the LTCCM annex is the overview of the benchmark for all the borders, both for yearly and for monthly. And then, as already mentioned, what we do during the capacity calculation, this is used as an input, and then thanks to the induced flows calculation, the flow-based domain gets adjusted. So whatever the benchmark is, it should be feasible when looking at the final flow-based domain. What we also apply is the minimum and maximum ATC benchmark with the same number, and we are using 100% of the historical capacities unless there is a specific guidance for the border. Going forward, we analyze a standard set of KPIs. So maybe on the next slide, there is KPI 1, which is minimum and maximum net position. So I would say this is one of the standard KPIs that you probably remember also from other timeframes, such as day ahead and intraday. And we are trying to show here what the domain was without the adjustments for the benchmark and what it will be. What I would really like to underline here is that it is a very theoretical concept when it comes to the KPIs, because it also considers non-simultaneous behaviors, and basically the overall import and export, as well as the maximum bilateral exchanges, give an idea of what the domain is and what exchanges it could embed. But without going into such nitty-gritty, I think what is very important to note here is that even though in some cases the red is lower, it provides a more sort of consistent trend with historical capacities. So obviously with the pure flow-based, in some cases there were big spikes, but the big spikes were then also sort of causing much lower capacities or smaller size of a domain for certain parts of the region. So with the red, meaning the capacities with adjustments based on the benchmark, we have a more predictable and stable trends between years. So when you compare 2024, 2025, it is somewhat more stable, but also in comparison with historical maximum exchanges, it is more reflecting the historical conditions and the trends. Going to the next slide, even more theoretical concept is the maximum bidding zone exchanges, so the max specs, as we also call it. So this is the maximum possible exchange across each bidding zone border, assuming 0 exchanges on all other borders. This really means that KPIs analyzes or shows what would be the potential maximum exchange if there are no other exchanges in core. So I'd say everybody can agree that this is highly unlikely. So here on this slide, again, we have a comparison of flow-based domain without the adjustment and the flow-based domain with adjustment. And again, the story is more or less the same, even though in some cases the adjusted domain seems to have lower numbers. It is more controlled, more in line with the historical trends, and also we are shaving off the big spikes that then can to revenue adequacy. So all in all, I would say it is better distributed capacity, and it also ticks all the other boxes when we are considering a better flow-based domain, perhaps. On the next slide, I think we have a slightly different view. This is very difficult to read. I will also not go into the details. This is something that market participants can also check as part of the KPIs. Obviously, this is the same view, but for monthly, both for KPI 1 and KPI 2. Maybe what I would like to say with regards to the simulations on allocation, that's slide 40. If I could ask you, Nikki, to go forward. So many other views on the same KPIs, but what is important is to mention something about the allocations. Obviously, for allocations, we used the adjusted min ATC and max ATC flow-based domain. So this is with the benchmark, but the historical bid files for 2024. For Polish borders, the bids were created by PSE, and this was then somehow adjusted. And also we accounted for the split auctions for Belgian and French and German French borders. So basically, this is the full view on how it would look with the LTFBA simulations using the adjusted domain, that historical bids. I would say, as a concluding remark, the key benchmark effect is especially observed when we are looking at the preset benchmarks in the final domains, also after splitting. So in human words, it means that whatever we are doing in the capacity calculation, whether it's the I don't know, the timestamp selection or even the splitting, we are always able to encompass the preset benchmark in the final domain. And then it also shows that there is stable performance on all borders in line with the benchmark and the way it is set in the LTCCM. We are effectively shaving off any extremes by the max ATC benchmark, and this would also help in case that we have some inflated parts of the domain. This inflation, or basically the max or the very much increased capacities, would then cause issues when it comes to revenue adequacy. But also we see that with the benchmark application, the domains are much less sensitive to other changes in input parameters such as CGM quality, their number, or also what outages we include, or even the MinRAM application. So I would only close off, from my side at least, I would close off with saying that the min-max ATC scenario provides stability of offered capacities to allocation. So again, it is only an input to allocation and ensures the revenue adequacy by tackling the extreme capacities and potentially volatile capacity calculation results. Not sure whether there are any questions on the simulations normally. And I only, I'm only wondering whether stakeholder managers from core would like to say anything now, or rather closing remarks towards the end of the session.
Well, regarding core calculations, of course, we keep you updated in the next core consultative group in the next year, of course. So, yeah, that's it basically.
Yeah, and as said previously, all the results will be also available, or the external pilot run results will be always available on the websites. So hopefully with this presentation, you will also understand a bit what to expect and how to read it. And thanks, Ruth. I think this is a nice invitation then to the CGs next year, because those will be important. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia and Ruud, for the closing remark here. And then the 2 slides we have left is for the Nordic RCC once again.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Urania, and I'm working with Nordic RCC. And yeah, here we're going to go through the Year-1 results for Nordics. And as Jörn mentioned, we went live with the Year-1 in October 31st in 2025. And we used the transitional solution of ATC in order to complete the process. So you will be able to find the results on the Nordic RCC website. And up to the go live, we had the local and regional readiness for the go live that has been validated through extensive and structured testing. Also, we had 2 internal parallel runs, which started in June 2025 and it ended in September of the same year. And during these runs, we used Year-1, 2025 and 2026 data in order to perform analysis and prove that there is robustness, process robustness and stability. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can find the results on the Nordic RCC website for this year until the LTFPA is live, and then we publish all the results on JAO. And on the Nordic RCC website, you can find information about the handbooks. We published 2 handbooks back in August. One handbook about the ATC results and one handbook about flow-based. And then below that, you can find the actual files with the results of the ATC and the flow-based. Under the flow-based, we have published the flow-based constraints, the CGM base case information, and also bidding zone values and border values. So yeah, that was it from the Nordics. And yeah, let me know if you have any question.
Thank you, Aurania. I don't see any questions or hand raised, so thank you.
Thank you.
That was actually the last slide we had today, or the last topic we had today. So if there are no further questions, I want to say thank you to all the speakers and also all the attendants to this workshop. And as we have said today, a lot of developments and implementation will go on in 2026. And of course, we expect to have further deadline or further workshops when we get closer to a go live in 2026. But as of today, this is all that we had to present. And I give you 10 more seconds to post a question or raise your hand. Or maybe our colleagues from ACER wants to have a closing remark. Okay, if not, then okay, Martin, turn his camera on. I guess it's all from us to say thank you to all participants. Martin, I don't know if you want to add something.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you from both of us on this, or you're attending this co-organized workshop between ENTSO-E and ACER and all TSO, of course. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.